She was walking alone at midnight after her shift. Then a man grabbed her arm and said, "Walk faster." She had no idea he was a millionaire. CEO. Under the flickering light of the street lamp, Christine's breath turned visible in the crisp night air. She had just stepped out of the diner, the glass door closing with a muted thud behind her, the sound swallowed instantly by the emptiness of the street. Her watch read 12:46 a.m. The city was asleep. Only the hum of distant traffic and the wind-rustling litter down the gutters reminded her that time was still moving forward. She tightened her coat and adjusted the strap of her worn canvas bag. Her sneakers scuffed softly on the damp sidewalk as she turned left into the narrow alley, a shortcut she had taken 100 times before. 7 minutes to home, she thought. She just had to make it through the alley, then 2 blocks past the closed pharmacy, and she would be at her apartment. But something was different tonight. A low rustle, then the faint, rhythmic tap of footsteps. Christine's pulse skipped. "Probably just someone else heading home," she whispered under her breath, forcing a small laugh, trying to outpace the unease creeping into her chest. But the footsteps didn't fade. They grew louder, steadier, matching hers. No, not matching. Mirroring, like a shadow that didn't belong to her. She slowed. So did they. She sped up. They followed, unbroken. Too close. A chill licked the back of her neck. She reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing the edge of her phone, but before she could grab it, a hand clamped firmly around her wrist. "Let go of me!" she screamed, trying to twist away, her voice sharp and panicked. But the man's grip was unwavering. His voice, low and commanding, cut through her cry. "Walk faster, don't look back." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She could barely breathe. The man wore a dark hoodie, head lowered, face obscured by shadows. She couldn't make out his eyes, only the glint of city light off the edge of his jaw. His breath came short and quick, not out of nervousness. It sounded controlled, like he was prepared, like he had done this before. "Please, please don't hurt me," she whispered, her voice cracking. He didn't respond. He didn't squeeze her wrist harder, but he didn't let go either. He started walking, dragging her with him, his steps swift and purposeful. Christine stumbled to keep pace, every muscle in her body locked between flight and terror. The alley narrowed, darkness thickening with each step. There were no windows here, no exits. Just damp brick walls, a single flickering light behind them, and a sense of dread that wrapped around Christine's throat like a noose. A new waitress, missing after night shift. Body found in alleyway, suspect unknown. The headlines flashed through her mind like a cruel joke. Her legs wanted to run, but her brain couldn't issue the command. His grip, while firm, wasn't painful. It wasn't rough. He wasn't hitting her. He wasn't yelling. But the silence was worse. He just kept walking. Why? Why wasn't he doing anything? Why hadn't he dragged her into the shadows or pulled a weapon? She tried to look at his face again, but the angle in the dark gave her nothing, just the steady pressure of his hand on her wrist and the sound of 2 sets of feet echoing off concrete. Then a sound pierced the silence, a sharp clang like metal against stone, a bottle rolling, glass scraping pavement. Opening a small window, his killer. Christine froze, but the man gripped her tighter, whispering through clenched teeth, "Keep walking." A blur of motion behind them, a shadow darting out from the darker end of the alley, then vanishing down the street they'd just crossed. Christine gasped, turning her head just in time to see the figure disappear behind a dumpster. The man released her wrist slightly, not fully letting go, but enough to ease the pressure. Her chest rose and fell in frantic heaves. She couldn't think, couldn't speak. But for the first time since he grabbed her, Christine felt something shift. Fear still coursed through her veins, but now it was no longer fear of the man beside her. It was fear of what might have happened if he hadn't been there. She glanced up at him again, and though she still couldn't see his face clearly, she noticed the way his shoulders had tensed, not like a predator, but like a shield, protective, alert. And suddenly, without understanding why, Christine stopped pulling away. Her hand relaxed slightly in his grip. She kept walking. Christine followed him, her feet moving faster than her thoughts could keep up. The man didn't speak again. He didn't glance back at her. He simply walked, not dragging her now, but still holding her wrist as if he knew the second he let go, she would run. They turned 2 corners in silence. The alley widened. Streetlights returned, casting pale circles of safety on the cracked pavement. The hum of a vending machine buzzed near. World started to reappear. He finally released her hand. Christine stumbled a step back, clutching her wrist, her breathing ragged. Her heart had not yet slowed. She stared at the man, half expecting him to vanish. But he didn't move. He just stood there, a silhouette against the distant glow of a closed laundromat, face still hidden beneath the hood. What just happened?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He didn't answer. "Who was that?" she pressed. "Was he following me? Do you know him?" Still nothing. "Do you?" "This time," he responded. His voice was low, calm, deliberate. "He's been watching you for days." Christine's mouth fell open. "What?" The man turned slightly, enough for the faint light to catch the side of his face. His jaw was tight, lips pressed into a grim line. "Same path, same time, same shoes, same intent." "How do you—" she started, but he cut her off with a look, not angry but resolute, unreadable. "You should stop using that alley," he said. "You were watching me too," she snapped. "You think that's any less terrifying?" His head tilted slightly. "That is why I followed him." Christine felt the street tilt beneath her feet. It was too much, too sudden. Her knees threatened to give, but she stayed upright, arms folded tightly over her chest. "You're not making any sense. Who are you? What do you want?" "I want nothing," he said. "Just be careful." And with that he turned. "No, wait!" Christine took a step forward, but he was already walking away, disappearing back into the shadows from which he came. Not running, not hiding, just fading into the night like he belonged there. Christine stood frozen beneath the street lamp, her skin still tingling where his hand had held her. Her breathing had steadied, but her thoughts hadn't. She looked around, at the street, the buildings, the quiet emptiness of it all. For the first time in a long time, the city felt unfamiliar. She wasn't sure what had just happened. A stranger had grabbed her, pulled her through the dark, spoken in riddles, and vanished. Had he saved her? Or had she just escaped one danger by walking into another? But then she remembered the sound, the clang of metal, the figure running behind them, the way the man had placed himself slightly in front of her, his grip tightening, not to control, but to protect. She remembered his voice when he said, "He was closer than I thought." He had been watching, but not her. Not really. Christine stood there for a long time, her pulse slowly returning to normal. She rubbed her wrist and turned toward home, eyes flicking to every shadow, every doorway. When she reached the corner of her street, she paused and glanced back down the alley. It was empty, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. She walked the rest of the way in silence. Christine sat across from the police officer, her hands gripping the edge of the metal chair as she recounted every detail she could remember. The narrow alley, the shadow behind her, the man who grabbed her and the one who ran. The officer listened, nodding occasionally, typing without much expression. "There's no footage," he finally said. "No cameras in that alley, no witnesses. You said the man who helped you never gave a name?" She shook her head. "Well, we'll file a report, but without more, there's not much we can do. If someone follows you again, call immediately. Don't confront them." Christine left the station, feeling worse than when she arrived. At work, things weren't any better. Her coworker Beth leaned in as Christine wiped down a counter. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Christine hesitated. "I think someone tried to follow me home the other night." Beth raised an eyebrow. "Think? Or you're just feeling paranoid? You've been working late too much." "I'm serious," Christine said. "Someone was there. 2 people, actually. One of them, I don't know what he was. He grabbed me, but then he might have saved me." Beth's smirk faltered. "Saved you?" Christine nodded. "He said I was being watched, that someone had been following me. And you believed him?" "I don't know." Beth gave her a long look. "Be careful, Christine. Sounds like he's the one you should be afraid of." But Christine couldn't stop thinking about it. She couldn't stop feeling it. There were subtle things, the sound of footsteps behind her that disappeared the second she turned around, the reflection of eyes in a dark window, a car idling just a little too long across the street from her apartment. She changed her route home. She walked in lit areas, took the long way, avoided the alley completely. She started leaving work earlier, double-checking that no one was behind her. She began locking the door twice, even during the day. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the doubt, the gnawing, aching uncertainty. Had she imagined it all? Was her mind playing tricks on her? Or was someone still watching? One night, as she exited the pharmacy with a bag of groceries, she saw him again. The man. He stood near a closed bus stop, under a rusted shelter, arms folded, hood up. He didn't move, just stood there, like a statue from a dream. Her heart pounded, but this time, she didn't run. She crossed the street and walked straight to him. He didn't flinch. "You," she said, stopping a few feet away. "Why do you keep showing up?" He didn't respond. "You followed me. You grabbed me. You said someone was after me, then you disappeared. Who are you?" He stared straight ahead, his voice low. "It's not important." "Not important." Christine stepped closer. "Are you some kind of self-appointed guardian? You think you're helping people?" He remained silent. "Or maybe you're hiding something," she continued, anger rising. "Maybe you're not the hero. Maybe you're the one I should be afraid of. You're always there, always watching. What are you really trying to do?" He finally looked at her, and then he sat down on the bench behind him, as if her words had taken the strength out of his legs. His shoulders slumped, his eyes suddenly not dark, but hollow. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I'm just a terrible brother." Christine's breath caught. She wasn't expecting that. He didn't look at her. He stared at the ground, hands clasped between his knees. Christine's anger drained slowly from her chest, replaced with something else, something heavier and sadder. She stood there for a long time, unsure of what to say. Then, quietly, she sat down beside him. He didn't move away. Neither of them spoke. The city hummed faintly in the background, and in that moment, 2 strangers, bound by shadows and silence, sat shoulder to shoulder beneath a flickering street lamp. They started meeting again, not by chance this time, but by quiet, unspoken agreement. No plans were made, yet somehow their paths aligned under the same streetlights. At first, it was brief, a nod from across the street, a silent walk to the next corner. But it became more. They would walk together late in the evening, sometimes through familiar blocks, sometimes to new places Christine had never noticed before. He showed her the soup kitchen where he occasionally volunteered. She brought extra food from the diner and handed it out to the same homeless man who always waited near the park bench. They never talked about what had happened. Not directly. Instead, they let the silence between them grow softer, not heavier. Christine found herself listening more, even when no words were spoken. And Liam, though he rarely said much, began looking her in the eye more often, as if searching for something. Or maybe letting something go. One evening, they sat on the wide stone steps of an old library, long closed for renovation. The air was cool, autumn sneaking in at the edges of summer. The city buzzed gently in the distance, muted by the quiet side street they had found. Liam looked ahead, his voice low and even. Her name was Sophie. She was 16, he said. She walked home one night, just a few blocks. She never made it. No one helped her, no one called. They all heard her screaming, but they just shut their windows. Silence. Christine turned to him. She loved lemon candy, he said, a faint smile brushing his lips, though his eyes didn't smile with it. And old books. She had this idea that she'd write one someday. A novel. I still have the first chapter she printed, full of spelling errors and characters named after her favorite cartoon. Christine stayed quiet. She was on her way home from a friend's birthday. Only 5 blocks. But it was dark, and she never made it. Someone followed her, attacked her. She screamed. His jaw tightened. No one opened their doors. No one even called for help until morning. "I'm so sorry," Christine said softly. "I was supposed to pick her up," he whispered, "but I forgot. I was at a party, some dumb networking thing. I didn't even check my phone until it was too late." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't cold or awkward. It was sacred. "I started walking the streets after that," he said. "Not just for her, for every girl walking home alone, every stranger who might need someone to care." Christine felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. The shadows he carried weren't the kind you could see, but they were deep, and they ran through everything he did. A few nights later, it rained. They ducked beneath the awning of a shuttered bookstore, water cascading in sheets just inches from their feet. Christine was soaked. So was Liam, though he didn't seem to notice. She pulled tissues from her coat pocket and gently dabbed the drops from his forehead. He didn't flinch. He just looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his eyes softened. She smiled, but it wavered. "You don't have to do this alone." He said nothing. "You're not responsible for every bad thing that happens in the world," she continued. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself." She reached out and took his wrist gently, echoing that night in the alley, but reversing the roles. Her fingers wrapped around his just enough to be felt. "You don't have to protect the world," she said again, her voice barely louder than the rain. "Just let someone protect you for once." For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he smiled. A quiet, fleeting smile, one that didn't carry pain or burden. He didn't speak. He didn't pull away. The uneasy feeling had returned. Christine could sense it again, the invisible pressure, the way shadows seemed to linger a second too long, the occasional chill running down her spine when she walked alone. She had hoped it was just paranoia, the echo of past fear. But Liam didn't think so. They sat together on a bench near the edge of the park, dusk stretching long shadows across the path. "He's still out there," Liam said quietly, his eyes scanning the street ahead. "Same man, same pattern. I've seen him twice near the diner this week." Christine's throat tightened. "Then we have to do something." Liam looked at her, his jaw tight. "We will, but carefully." The plan was simple but dangerous. Christine would walk her old route home, the same alley, the same time. Liam would follow at a distance, this time watching not her, but the shadows. They had already informed a police contact of their suspicions. Officers would be nearby, waiting for a signal. It was risky, but Christine refused to be hunted any longer. That night, she stepped out of the diner alone. Every footstep echoed louder than usual. Her hands trembled, but she kept walking just as they had planned. The alley loomed ahead, narrow, damp, dimly lit. She hesitated only once before stepping inside. Then she heard it. Footsteps behind her. Faster this time, closer. She turned just as a figure lunged from the dark. But before the man could reach her, Liam was there, appearing like a shadow himself, intercepting the attacker with a forceful shove. A scuffle broke out. Christine screamed as the man pulled a knife, slashing wildly. Liam dodged, but not fast enough. The blade caught his side. A sharp, sickening sound. Liam staggered. "No!" Christine cried, running forward. She grabbed the attacker's arm, trying to pull him back. He shoved her hard, but she didn't fall. She held on, fighting back with every ounce of strength she had. Then, sirens. Blue and red lights flashed at the mouth of the alley. Officers shouted commands. The attacker tried to run, but a police officer tackled him to the ground before he got 5 steps. Christine dropped to her knees beside Liam. His breathing was ragged, blood soaked through his shirt. "I've got you," she whispered, pressing her hands to his side. "Stay with me, please. Just stay with me." Later, in the back of the ambulance, the police explained what they had found. The man had a record. He was wanted in another state for attempted assault. He had vanished months ago, slipping between cities, stalking women, looking for easy prey. Christine had been his latest target. "Admitted it," one officer said grimly. "He planned to rob you. And worse." Christine's stomach turned. Her vision blurred. Liam had saved her, again. And this time, he had nearly died for it. She reached for his hand, clutching it tight as the ambulance sped toward the hospital, tears falling freely. She didn't care who he was. She didn't care how powerful or wealthy or mysterious he might be. To her, in that moment, he was the only person in the world. Christine's hands were shaking as she pressed the blood-soaked towel against Liam's side, her own clothes stained crimson. He was slumped against her in the backseat of the cab, unconscious, lips pale, breaths shallow. Her voice trembled as she shouted at the driver to go faster, her mind barely able to form coherent thoughts. When they reached the emergency room, nurses rushed to them immediately, but Christine refused to let go until someone physically pulled her away. Her fingers were stiff with dried blood, her pulse thudding in her ears as they wheeled Liam out of sight behind double doors. A nurse returned with a clipboard. "We need his full name and any medical history if you know it." Kristen blinked. "His name is Liam. That's all I know." The nurse frowned. "Last name? I don't..." She hesitated, reaching for her phone, searching desperately for anything that might help. That was when a doctor appeared, reading the intake chart and murmuring, "Liam Carter?" Christine froze. She knew that name. Everyone did. Liam Carter, tech mogul, reclusive billionaire, founder of Carter Tech, charity funder, philanthropist, the man who avoided cameras, refused interviews, and built a tech empire while staying completely out of the public spotlight. And he had been walking her home at midnight, bandaging strangers' wounds, handing out food, dragging her from alleys, and now bleeding into her lap. Her breath caught in her throat. "It's him," she whispered, as the world tilted under her feet. "Yes," the nurse replied gently. "Do you want to be listed as his emergency contact?" Christine nodded without thinking. The hours passed in blurs. She sat in a hard plastic chair, her fingers wrapped around the hem of her coat, replaying everything. The rain, the walks, his stories, his silence, his pain. Why would a man like him choose this life? Why her? She was just a waitress. He was... But the blood on her hands wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It was sacrifice. And that answered the question she kept asking herself. She loved him. By morning, the doctors allowed her in. Liam was still unconscious, hooked to monitors, tubes running from his arms. His face was pale, his breathing still shallow, but steady. Christine pulled the chair close to his bedside, sat down, and took his hand in hers. She didn't leave for 2 days. She held his hand, talked to him softly, slept in short, broken intervals, afraid he might vanish if she closed her eyes too long. On the second night, she cried, deep, aching sobs muffled into the crook of her elbow, because she couldn't imagine not hearing his voice again. Just before dawn, his fingers moved. Then his eyelids fluttered. Christine sat upright, eyes wide. "Liam?" she whispered, her hand tightening around his. He stirred slowly, then looked at her, dazed, blinking like he wasn't sure if she was real. And then his hand tightened around hers. "May?" His voice cracked. "May? You're okay." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm okay," she said, nodding. "You're the one lying in a hospital bed and you're asking about me?" He gave her the faintest smile. "Of course I am." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," he whispered. "You never will." They stayed like that for a long time, the machines beeping softly around them, the city beyond the window beginning to wake. And then, without ceremony, without question, he lifted his hand to her cheek, brushed away a tear, and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or dramatic, it was gentle, honest. A promise sealed not with words, but with the quiet certainty that neither of them had to be alone anymore. 3 months had passed since that night in the hospital, but for Christine, it still lived in her heart like it had happened yesterday. Sometimes she would catch herself replaying it all, the sirens, the blood, the way Liam had looked at her when he came to, and it would bring a rush of emotion so strong she would have to pause and steady her breath. That night had marked the end of fear, of loneliness, and of wondering whether someone like her would ever find something as pure and powerful as love. A new season had begun, not just on the calendar but in her life. The shadows that once lingered at the edges of her world had given way to soft light and quiet certainty. Gone were the sleepless nights and the dark alleys that haunted her. Gone was the quiet ache of always walking home alone. Now, she moved through her days with purpose, clarity, and the deep comfort of knowing that she no longer had to face the world on her own. Christine now worked as Liam's personal assistant at Carter Tech. It was a leap from the diner, where she'd spent years memorizing regulars' orders and juggling triple shifts, but she adapted quickly. The corporate world was fast and polished, but she brought her steady rhythm and warmth into every task. She didn't try to impress with flashy words or designer clothes. She came as herself, and that authenticity shone brighter than anything else. Colleagues warmed to her immediately. She made an effort to learn everyone's name, remembered birthdays, and never dismissed anyone's ideas. Her reputation wasn't built on being the CEO's girlfriend. It was earned through kindness, quiet leadership, and a work ethic that never faltered. Her laughter, once rare, now floated through the halls like a familiar melody. With Liam, things were steady. They kept their relationship discreet, not out of shame but out of respect. There were no grand gestures in the break room, no whispers of affection in meetings. But to anyone paying attention, the connection between them was undeniable. Liam's face softened when she entered the room, his entire demeanor shifting subtly. He listened to her input during meetings. He deferred to her judgment, and when their eyes met across the room, there was always something shared, something unspoken, but deeply understood. Liam, once known as the intense and reclusive figurehead of Carter Tech, had changed. Not in the way people feared when someone powerful falls in love, but in the way someone heals when they're finally safe. He smiled more. He stayed a little longer in casual conversations. He began mentoring junior staff, offering real-time and advice. He invited his team for lunch in the rooftop garden, laughed at jokes, even teased back. People noticed the shift, but more than that, they noticed Christine. And instead of resenting her, they admired her for what she had endured and for the light she clearly brought to Liam's life. One late afternoon, Christine was alone in the conference room, finishing up notes from a board meeting. The floor was quiet, most employees having already gone home. The sky outside was painted in strokes of gold and rose, the setting sun casting a warm hue across the polished table and her notebook. She was gathering her things when the door opened behind her. Liam stepped in, hands in his pockets. He looked composed, but there was something different in his eyes, an edge of hesitation that was rare for him. "Hey," he said, his voice casual, but his gaze didn't leave her. "Hey," she replied, offering a small smile. "Just wrapping up. I'll send the recap in a bit." He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he walked to the center of the room and stopped, facing her. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I've been thinking about something," he said finally, his voice softer now. Christine tilted her head, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "What's that?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. And then, without a word, he dropped to one knee. Christine gasped, frozen. "I found you in the dark," Liam said, looking up at her, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "But you brought light to my world." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Nothing flashy, just timeless and sincere. "Will you be my light forever?" Christine's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming. Her heart swelled so quickly she felt she might burst. She could only nod at first, then finally whispered, "Yes." Then again, stronger, "Yes." Liam rose, slipping the ring onto her finger, and wrapped his arms around her. They stood there in the golden hush of the empty room, holding each other like everything that mattered was already in their arms. Two souls, once lost in the dark, now found in the light, together. The sun filtered through the trees in gentle rays, casting golden light over the small garden tucked behind an ivy-covered estate just outside the city. It was the kind of golden hour photographers dream of, where everything glows softly and the air itself seems to hold its breath. The garden was quiet, sacred in its simplicity. White roses lined the path, their petals opening slowly under the warm light, and delicate fairy lights twinkled in the hedges as evening crept in. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying the scent of jasmine and newly turned earth. It was as if the entire world had chosen this moment to pause and witness something good. It was not a grand wedding. There were no headlines, no flashing bulbs, no designer gowns for magazines to critique. This wasn't a spectacle. It was a promise, quiet, intimate, and deeply human. There were only the people who truly mattered, and in their eyes this moment sparkled brighter than any ballroom. Christine stood beneath a simple arch woven with wildflowers, her hand resting in Liam's. Her dress shimmered with soft silver threads, catching the light with every subtle movement. It was elegant but unpretentious, just like her. Her golden hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, kissed by the sun and brushed by the breeze. Liam stood beside her, dressed in a classic navy suit, crisp and clean, but it wasn't the tailoring that made him stand out. It was the way he looked at her, like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. In the front row sat Christine's mother, her eyes misty with pride as she clutched a laced handkerchief in her lap. Next to her were colleagues from Carter Tech, some in suits, others more casually dressed, all smiling warmly. Many of them glanced at Liam with quiet awe. This was the man they worked with daily, now revealed in a light few had ever seen. Among the guests were people who didn't wear suits at all. Some wore weathered jackets and scuffed shoes, but their eyes shone brightest. These were men and women whose lives had intersected with Christine and Liam's in quiet, profound ways. Former strangers who had been helped without fanfare, now standing here as honored guests. When the officiant stepped back, nodding with a gentle smile, Liam turned to Christine and took both her hands. His voice was low, meant only for her. "From now on," he whispered, as he slid the ring onto her finger, "you will never have to walk that alley alone again." Christine's breath caught. Her eyes filled as she gripped his hand with both of hers and whispered back, "Because I'll always have you." The applause rose, softly, respectful, and full of warmth. But Christine barely heard it. All she saw was Liam, the man who had pulled her from fear, from darkness, and into a world she had almost given up believing in. Together they turned and walked back down the aisle, hand in hand. White petals fluttered in the air like blessings. The garden erupted in soft laughter and music, but in the center of it all were just two people who had fought their way toward light and found it in each other. no longer bound by the dark. They walked into the light, together. If this story touched your heart, made you hold your breath, or reminded you that love can bloom even in the darkest corners, then we invite you to stay with us for more. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we bring you tales that heal, inspire, and linger long after the screen fades to black. Stories of quiet heroes, of love found in unlikely places, of compassion that changes lives. Subscribe now to join a community that believes in the power of storytelling, the kind that stirs your soul. Because sometimes, the story you didn't expect is the one you needed most.